That's the song of the century.
This is the butter, the brown sugar, and the white sugar, and beating it. Recipes always say beat until light and fluffy, about 2 to 3 minutes. And to tell you the truth, I've never gotten it light and fluffy in 2 to 3 minutes. I just put it in there, and I leave it in there for about 10 minutes, and it gets nice and light and fluffy. Now, not every type of baking thing do you want to mix it so much, but for cookies, the sugar and the butter can be beat for a long time to make it light and fluffy. This recipe calls for melted butter, which is very unique, and not all cookie recipes call for that, but it seems to work for this one. So now I'm going to scrape the sides of the bowl and add the egg and beat it for about another minute just to incorporate it, and then add the vanilla. Eggs. Start it out slow so it doesn't send egg all over your kitchen. Just bring it to medium-high for about a minute. You noticed I cracked the eggs in a bowl and then poured them in. It's much better to just have them in a bowl and pour them in than cracking your egg over your bowl, risking getting shells inside your batter. So I scrape the bowl again, and here's the vanilla, 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla. And mix until incorporated. Now I'm going to be adding the flour, which we mixed already together. Just whisk together the flour, the baking soda, and the salt in a small bowl, and I'll be adding that in small portions to the batter to make the cookies. So the recipe calls to just lower the mixer to, change the mixer to low and start adding your flour, but that kind of makes flour, sends flour all over your kitchen. So I just turn it off and then turn it on low and add a little bit. And I sometimes can add a bit while, before it gets fully incorporated, I'll just add a little bit more. This is the stage where you don't want to mix it too much. You don't want now that the flour is going in, you don't want it to turn out gummy. So if you look, it's not quite incorporated each time I add it. And I'm trying to add it as, whoa, and that's one way to turn it on. In as few steps as possible. And I don't even let the mixer fully mix it because I can get the last of this mixed together with the few times that I'm putting the chips and the nuts in. So it's not fully incorporated, but that's okay. Okay, we're going to add chocolate chips. The recipe calls for 16 ounces of chocolate chips, but you know when you make chocolate chip cookies or you have chocolate chip cookies and you say, wow, these have so many chocolate chips. Well, they have so many chocolate chips because they didn't follow the recipe. They've added more chocolate chips than the recipe is called for. So I don't always use the same amount. I just use kind of what looks right in my dough. So I'm adding probably almost 3 containers, 3 12-ounce. So you know that's 36 ounces of chocolate chips. This one's not quite as full. These are just the semi-sweet chocolate chips from Trader Joe's. I do get different ones, you know, at different times, but you know what? I find that these are just fine. And before you add them all, start mixing a bit. I want to see more like stuff than dough in my cookies, but that's just me. I'm also adding walnuts to this. You can add any type of nut. I actually like pecans a lot, but the trick to the nuts in cookies is to toast them first. So you toast your nuts first. Let them cool because you don't want to add them hot. So I toasted walnuts last night. And I have them in kind of big chunks. I'm not breaking them up very small. You can, but these have been toasted already. 375. Walnuts toast pretty quickly in probably somewhere between 5 and 7 minutes. Pecans sometimes about 7 to 10 minutes. Just watch them because once they get dark, they easily get too dark. It's getting a little bit more challenging to mix this, which means I probably want to get a larger spatula, which I'll probably do in a moment. I switched out with a larger spatula. Sometimes you have to just cut through the middle of your dough. Probably be easier if I had this in a bigger bowl right now, but why waste another bowl? There. And now we have our nicely loaded cookie dough. We're going to bake these in rather large balls. So you roll them up in about a golf ball size ball, lightly press them down on a parchment covered rack or tray and bake them. I'll show you that step. And then they make nice large crispy yet chewy chocolate chip cookies. Now I'm going to make the cookie rounds about a 3-inch size, golf ball-ish size. Plop it down. Make all of your rounds first. Spread them out I always spread out cookies evenly throughout my baking sheet, and definitely with as much space as they will need to grow. This cookie sheet is lined with parchment, and I have the slip mat that I'm going to use on the second batch. This recipe and many cookie recipes ask you to cook one cookie sheet at a time, and I know that people are in a hurry and want to try to cook 2 at a time, but it doesn't work very well when the recipe says to bake 1 at a time. There's a reason for it. Part of it is that you want the oven temperature to stay nice and even throughout, and you can rotate the pan from top to bottom and forward and back, which I'll show you while we're baking. The half sheet pan size is a nice size that fits in ovens and fits in your drawers, so definitely a good purchase. And once again, as I said, I spread out my cookies so that there's plenty of space in between each one to grow, and I also keep them evenly spaced in my whole on my whole cookie sheet. I kind of always do a nice pattern, and it's just, maybe this is just my little quirky thing, but I feel like if it's all even on there, everything gets baked evenly. So you make your cookies the same size, you spread them out the same amount, and everything comes out nice and even. So I'll do my last one here. You can see all these all this goodness in here. And then I'm going to just slightly press them down. I'm just going to get my hand a little bit wet so that I'm not totally sticking on it. And you can see I'm not pressing them down too hard. I'm just pressing them down lightly. And if things start separating, I'll kind of push those back together. And there we go. That's our first batch. And I'll put in the oven. These are tasting the cookies. We found that, or felt that a little salt on the top of these to be baked in would add a nice balance to the cookies. So this is just a certain type of sea salt. I don't know. Coarse grained sea salt. Sweet and salty.